John Byrne with AML Right Source, and I have the distinct pleasure today, and I've been able to interview a number of folks in the years that we've been doing these various podcasts and webinars. But this is particularly interesting for me because John Tobon has been somebody that I've respected and followed throughout his career. Broad area of expertise of AML, sanctions, CFT, all sorts of financial crime issues. He's just recently retired from HSI. What we want to do today is talk to John about his career, some of the things that he's seen, some of the challenges. What are some of the things that financial institutions and others still, if they're not getting right, how can they fix those items? And then where he sees us going in what can best be described as the chaos that we're in right now in terms of policy consistency. So, John, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. Really appreciate it.
John, thank you for the invitation. I think I'm going to echo what the wonderful words you said about me, about you, and you are a pioneer. You're one of the individuals who laid down the groundwork and made it possible for me personally and a lot of us from my generation to get some wins. Without your work, our success would have been much more difficult. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're very kind. And obviously, the important part that we both share is the importance of private-public partnership, working together. And as we know, not every FI gets it completely right, and not every government agency does either. But when we work together, we can go after the bad guys, stop the movement of illicit funds, and go after all sorts of crimes that unfortunately still trouble us today. Let's talk a bit about your career. You were in customs before it became part of HSI. What were some of the early types of cases and activities that you were involved in? And maybe is any particular one stand out as something that even today you still recall, I'm not say fondly, but something that you're pretty proud of?
Yeah, I think I cut my teeth in financial crime when I started working in New York at US Customs in New York City. That was around the time that the El Dorado Task Force was created. And so I had the opportunity to begin to run with those guys. And so it's kind of like being in AA and being called up to the majors pretty much right away. And so it was fantastic. It was a wonderful learning environment. That is where I first started to see the benefits of partnership. So not just at the law enforcement level with federal, state, and local agencies participating, but that really was and remains a founding place for this public-private partnership. And it was amazing. I started out doing undercover work, which was a lot of fun. Never a dull moment. I knew that where I would start my day, and there were several days when I would call home as I was going to the airport to say, look, I'll be back tomorrow. I have this to do. I have this, this other case developed. So, fun stuff. Wonderful people to learn from.
So in the early days, obviously, not a lot of activity with cell phones and that sort of thing and the internet. So what were the biggest differences, besides the technology differences, what were the biggest differences in terms of partnering with financial institutions or anybody in the private sector when you're doing these investigations? Now, I don't want to say it's easier, but obviously the technology can enable more communication. But back then, what do young people don't understand that you had to go through back then?
Well, it was, the Money Laundering Control Act was not that old, and the relationship hadn't developed. There was a lot of distrust on both sides, and so that was significant because it always hindered that exchange of information. It always hindered the type of questions that were asked, and both the financial institutions and law enforcement were very reluctant to share those key pieces of information, which today form the basis of virtually every significant case that is made.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. So as we work through the 90s, I remember, and I'm sure you remember as well, there started to be sort of a public um, questioning or debate about the Bank Secrecy Act. We had the Know Your Customer proposal
Mhm.
that was seen as this major intrusion and had to be pulled by the regulators in the late 90s. It looked at that time like law enforcement might lose some tools. The financial institutions might not have the same obligations, but as we both know, that changed dramatically with 9/11. Before we talk about 9/11, toward the late 90s, did you see some of that too, or was that you guys were just grinding through your cases and your investigations, so the policy debate really didn't impact you then?
It impacted our ability to get information. It made our work more difficult. It never
Okay.
stopped us from doing the work. It just meant that we kind of had to go the long way around. Um, and we had to find other investigative methods that allowed us to get the type of information that we needed. And so um, I think, at that time, because I was so involved, I mean, I was in the field and I was directly involved with these cases and negotiating with criminal organizations because I was so in the weeds and there was so much to do there. The impacts of the policy at that time, I don't know that I necessarily understood how much policy was impacting,
Right.
the type of work that I had to do.
Was almost all the work back then about illicit drugs? Is that pretty much what the financial crime aspect was
Yeah.
for you guys at Customs?
Yeah, it was, 100% targeting drug trafficking organizations. This was, many, many years before we even started to look at laundering proceeds of other types of crime. And so, yes, it was focused on targeting drug trafficking organizations.
So after 9/11, obviously terrorist finances became a big item. How much education or training did you and your colleagues need? Obviously, we had the Patriot Act, so all the regs and the statutes that came out of that. So we're pretty well aware of those and some of the information sharing, the 314As and Bs, that sort of thing. How did it change? And then, of course, DHS was created. So walk us through the response to 9/11, the creation of the agency, the merging of all those different, not sub agencies, but different organizations within that. And how did that impact you personally in terms of the work that you were doing?
Yeah, it's funny because there was a lot of confusion, very similar to some of the things that are going on now. I remember, I was in the building on 9/11. We lost our office on 9/11. US Customs had its office at 6 World Trade Center.
Right.
We lost our office, and in the months after, in the aftermath, we were part of recovery of efforts, and so we had constant contact with, the World Trade Center site.
Right.
So it was a constant reminder for us. While we were focused on trying to get back on our feet, trying to pick up investigations that were ongoing, um, we all of a sudden heard that a new agency was being created, that a new department was being created. We were like, okay. And then we started to hear, we learned all of this from the media, by the way. There was
Right.
never a memo that said, this is what's happening. So then we learned about the creation of the Department of Homeland Security, and that we were going to go, that US Customs was going to go into DHS. And look, we're optimists by nature, even though, it's weird when you think of law enforcement personnel as optimists. because many of us are very jaded, but we
Mhm.
always try to see when it comes to like, hey, this is something new. We don't like change any more than anybody else, but we try to figure out, okay, so if that's what's going to happen, maybe this will happen. Maybe, we'll be able to, you know, get these additional resources or something else. So it was a little bit of excitement to say, okay, look, and obviously we were excited about fighting terrorism. We say, look, it's a a bona fide threat. Investigatively is challenging, and so this is it, right? Like now you get to challenge your own skill set, learn some new skills so that you can join this fight.
Mhm.
Um, and it was funny because some of the agencies that were not coming into DHS, they had their own ideas.
Mhm.
The most famous one, and I wish I would have kept a copy, um, but the DEA administrator sent a telex to all of the DEA offices saying, hey, Customs is out of drugs and Customs is out of money laundering investigations because they're going to fight terrorism. So only you, DEA, can prevent forest fires. Only you
Right.
can fight drug traffickers and money launderers. And we got a copy of that and we said, okay, is that true? Is that isn't true? Um, and then that was followed by the creation of ICE and who was going to go where. Um, so disruptive in the sense that it was one of those situations where they were building the plane as they were flying it.
Right. Yeah.
And so it was disruptive in terms of knowing who was going to be doing what resources were available, who was going to take what. It was that period between the creation of DHS and the creation of ICE, and the first couple of years of customs being moved into ICE were very disruptive to the mission itself.
So talk a bit about some of the financial crime um, examples that you dealt with when that occurred, when that transition occurred. What today we talk about human trafficking, we talk about elder abuse, sadly sextortion, all sorts of crimes that need money to enable the crime. Talk about some of the cases, or not cases, but some of the areas of coverage that you were involved in, when that transition occurred.
Yeah. So when the transition occurred, um, the biggest thing that happened with our focus is U.S. Customs, through Operation Greenback, started to focus on terrorism finance.
Mhm.
And that again, we took a skill set that we had, and we applied it to a different phenomenon. Very, very successful. Um, but unfortunately, we thought we had our marching orders. We didn't have our marching orders. So the Department of Homeland Security came into being March 1st of 2003.
Mhm.
In May of that year, because of fights, because of um, disputes with the FBI and their purview of terrorism, the then Secretary of Homeland Security, Tom Ridge, signed an MOU officially handing off the lead on terrorism investigations, including terrorism finance, to the FBI.
Right.
And so that had a significantly negative impact because we're like, look, this is what you told us we were. We're the Department of Homeland Security. We're doing Homeland Security, and now you're telling us, no, call the FBI.
Mhm.
And so that then put us on a path to say, okay, so how else can we contribute? What else can we use our skills at? And it was at that point in time that we began to look at that broader base.
Mhm.
Now we were like, okay, so everything except crimes of passion are done for the benefit of profit. So let's look at that. Let's start looking. The first one, the one that I think was the first fit was human smuggling,
Mhm.
proceeds from human smuggling. Um, then we also started to look at the informal payment systems. A broader look. Hawala, yes, but also really putting a focus on the black market peso exchange
Right, right.
and how that contributed and provided avenues for criminal organizations to circumvent our regulations and obviously to launder their money, and then also looking at the financing of trade utilizing dirty money.
Mhm. Yeah, so the whole trade-based money laundering, which obviously we're well aware of now, that that became an issue, as you mentioned, human smuggling, human trafficking. I can remember when I was at ACAMS, we got a bunch of bankers together and worked with your folks, real smart analysts in banks and real smart analysts with HSI, and they went off and came up with what are now pretty common typologies, but at the time were things we weren't that aware of, and we were able to publish that to the broader community. So that was a real positive example of private-public partnership. And again, the trade-based stuff, I'm sure you're a professor at FIU. You do a lot of training, so that's always a big part of explaining that the black market peso obviously is something that anybody who's taken a CAMS exam is well aware of. So all that was beginning to occur during that time. And again, you're doing training, you're doing outreach. What are your how do you remember how the financial sector was going? Look, there's been enforcement actions. We know there's been gaps in compliance in some spaces, but I certainly believe, and I think you do to a degree, that people that do our jobs in our institutions want to do the right thing. What was the level of communication like? After 2006, up until the teens in terms of the financial sector. Again, knowing that there's been enforcement actions
Yep.
and there's been criticism, but obviously you still needed to do your job. So how did you feel about that? And maybe jump ahead and say, how do you feel it's gone today? Is it getting better? Is it still the same? It's still pretty. Tell us about your relationship with the financial sector in terms of working together on investigations and all the things that are important, to HSI and obviously to society in general.
Yeah, that relationship has really developed at a pretty fast pace. A very, very close relationship. It's funny. I heard someone say the other day, if humans were angels, we wouldn't need rules.
Right.
And I think that really it was around that time, post 9/11, when that trust between law enforcement and the financial industry really took hold, because there had been a period of time where it wasn't just trust me, it was we've already done it, right? There were wins, there were successes, there was good feeling that had built up over all those years. So now we had that established relationship, and and not just here in the U.S., because I got to Bogota as assistant attaché in 2003, and during the time that I was in Bogota from 2003 into 2007, there was a really good relationship with the Colombian banking sector,
Hmm.
who said, look, understand all the risk. What can we do better? And there was a lot of collaboration, not just with customs or what became HSI, but with all of the law enforcement entities at the embassy, to help close those gaps, to clarify misunderstandings, because again, look, financial institution and folks are not law enforcement officers, and law enforcement officers don't have, a lot of us don't have firsthand experience of what being in the financial industry is like.
Right.
And so we started that, that information exchange, that knowledge exchange, which I think, today is fantastic. I mean, just by the number of um, conferences and associations that we have, and everybody is thriving in that private-public partnership.
Couple things I want to tie this up with. One is that's all good, and we're happy to hear that. What are some of the areas in which your financial institution partners in 2025 can do better? What you've seen over time. Like I said, forget about the enforcement actions. They need to do the basic blocking and tackling, and obviously there needs to be focus on creating valid suspicious activity report. But just in general, high level, to the extent that there are gaps or areas, let's put it, challenges to where they can improve. If I call you in to talk to our board of directors at our bank and I say, John, tell us what we can do to improve in the AML CFT sanction space, what types of things would you recommend?
I would say help us improve the number of prosecutions.
Mhm.
Help us make the case to prosecutors at the state level. Help us get more prosecutions. Help us get more prosecutors to be trained. Help us get that part squared away so that when we have these conferences, we have equal number financial institution, law enforcement, and prosecutors. That continues to be the challenge that we have. We're very good at investigating. We're
Right.
awesome at cooperating. We can analyze data in ways they weren't even a dream. It's so amazing what can get done today, right? I often say I almost want to go back and start all over again because if I had these tools, my God.
Right.
But the one area that we are absolutely lacking is in financial crime knowledge in prosecutors so that they can even see and visualize the case,
Yeah.
and then actual prosecutions. For 2023, which is the last year that we have the numbers that you can get numbers from the Sentencing Commission, I think it was about 1,100 cases out of over 60,000 drug cases
Mm.
that were prosecuted in the U.S. And that continues to be a significant challenge.
Um, you retired 31 years, I think you said.
31 years.
31 years. Any particular thing you want to share in terms of the timing of your retirement? I'm going to ask you some other things about policy issues, but anything you want, it's certainly fine if you don't. But why did you pick now to step aside? You're going to still be doing training. You're an adjunct
Mhm.
professor, so you're still going to be giving back constantly. Anything in particular you want to mention that you sort of made the decision? Now it's time to move on and help in other ways.
Yeah, like look, this old dog knows one trick, financial crime. It's a very good trick. It's been a very lucrative trick. And up to now, it has been a priority trick. It has been the priority throughout, from administration to administration,
Mhm.
throughout my career. You know, there's always been the opportunity to take our work to the next level. There's always been the opportunity to fine tune regulations so that we get exactly what we need to safeguard the system without hindering the work of the financial industry, which is so important to our economy and the economy of the world. Um, I decided to leave because I read the tea leaves and I said, wait a minute,
Yeah.
this is no longer going to be um, a priority, and I'm not necessarily um, interested in the new priorities.
I'll get you out of here on this. Given what you just said, so we know part of your answer. What are the other things that either concern you or are going to be challenges for all of us in the AML community going forward? What do you see as things throughout 2025 and beyond? If we want to stay vigilant, if we want to stay proactive, what's it going to take, and what are some of the things that are going to be a challenge, or do some of these things concern you?
Look, I think what we've seen with the gutting of the CTA, very concerning. I worked on the CTA
Right.
as a senior advisor. I was detailed as a senior advisor to FinCEN on the CTA and on AMLA. And both of those have been really gutted and cut off at the knees. Those were two components that I think law enforcement has seen as critical for, to increase our efficiency. The dismantling of the kleptocracy unit at Maine DOJ, the stepping back on FCPA violations, all of that is incredibly concerning. And this is one of those situations, and we had this conversation when we were preparing for this,
Right.
where there's going to be a gap in terms of enforcement. We already know that. That's already, it's already a fact. And this is where that partnership is going to be tested. Were we truly friends? Did we truly believe in the same thing or not? And this is where integrity comes in.
Right.
Because if we both believed that we were doing these things in our collective effort to safeguard a financial system that both of us need to be healthy, robust, and strong, right now it is going to be the financial industry that is going to have to fend for themselves for a little bit until law enforcement can get back in the fight and pick that up again.
John Tobon, well said. You can follow John on LinkedIn, and John is available for expert witness work. He's also what we like to call a not just a thought leader, but somebody who's got the experience to train your staff. And he just finished up at a conference this week, so he's available for those events as well. So, John, thank you so much. Thank you for your service, but thank you for raising some of these issues and continuing the fight, as it's clear you're going to do. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, John.